Two lifeless bodies found tangled in wildflowers. One circus girl, one nobleman. Today we tumble headfirst into the tragic case of Elvira Madigan and Sixten Sparre. A tale of obsession, escape, and one final, extremely fatal act. Watch till the end and let me know what you thought about all this. But now, let's get straight on into it.
Morbid History.
Our story begins in 1867 with the birth of a little girl called Hedvig Jensen. Her parents were both circus performers, and from her earliest breath, Hedvig's life was one of wagons and wonders and grease paint and gas lamps. Then, at some point, her circus artist mother left Hedvig's father and married another man who was also a circus artist, and his name was John Madigan. As she was getting older, she eventually joined the family business, starting into the circus life, and when she did, she took her stepfather's last name and even changed her first name and became known as Elvira Madigan across the world. By her teens, Elvira dazzled audiences across Europe. She was known for performing in gauzy, daring outfits that scandalized Victorian sensibilities. And with her cherubic face and very long flowing blonde hair, she was dubbed a living fairy tale. Later, she performed as a duo with her adopted sister Gisela, and the two were marketed as the Daughters of Air. They were like angels suspended by rope, admired from below. But behind all that sparkle and well-curated glamour, Elvira's life was far from fun in any way. It was all business. Travel, perform, travel, perform, travel, perform, and that was just the never-ending life of Elvira. And always under the ever-watchful eye of her family. She was very much like a gilded bird, caged, yet, of course, airborne. Then came that fateful evening in 1888. Elvira by this point was only 20 years old, spinning mid-air, bathed in spotlight and huge applause. And watching from below, seated stiffly there among the crowd, was 31-year-old Swedish nobleman Sixten Sparre. And he was thoroughly captivated, no, bewitched. To Sixten, Elvira wasn't even a person. She was a vision, a story waiting to be written. In his mind, he wasn't just some man watching a show. He was a knight beholding his trapped princess, and he, naturally, would be her savior. And from that moment on, he wouldn't let her go. And like many narcissists before him, he mistook his obsession with true love. One little problem there though. Sixten was already married with 2 children. His wife, named Lutgard, it was like a marriage of convenience, and she had been chosen for him, and she tragically was not very loved by her husband, and he longed to break free from the suffocating polish of aristocratic life. He very much saw himself as a tortured soul, a wannabe romantic poet, a man with a hero complex so huge it could eat several horses. So as soon as Sixten returned from his new obsession, his mind remained in that circus tent. And so he began to write a lot.
Shit's all fucked up! Don't forget to like and subscribe!
Dozens, up to 100 letters sent off to Elvira. His first letter was pretty polite, a gentleman's admiration. I think Elvira was pretty used to those kinds of things. So she wrote back just kind enough that it fueled his intoxication of her. Soon his letters started to drip in melodrama. He called her his angel, his redemption, his only hope in this cruel world. God heckin' damn it. And when she began to try and pull away from this correspondence, he did not retreat. He escalated. In one of these letters, he goes ahead and threatens self-cancellation if she dares to abandon him. Just a reminder, they have never met at this point in person. So yeah, either way. Not very affectionate, more like coercion wrapped in prose and so-called romance. Elvira, young and heavily sheltered, as we already said, likely didn't know how to respond to these kinds of passions. She was raised to obey, smile, and perform. And now this random man had cast her in a story where she wasn't just the star, she was the heroine, the prize. So, when spring of 1889 arrived, Sixten had succeeded in his goal. He convinced Elvira to run away with him, and they met secretly in the Swedish little town of Bollnäs. He told her that he was rich beyond imagination, that he had divorced his wife, and that a new, beautiful and free life awaited our poor Elvira. Of course, none of that was true. And as Elvira and Sixten finally met up there in a little town in Sweden, she had everything she owned with her. And it didn't take long at all for the entire truth to finally come out. Sixten was very much still married, very much broke, having squandered his inheritance on poetry, parties, and different pretentious ideas. Because he, fancied himself some kind of misunderstood romantic, a hero for the downtrodden. But in truth, this was just a man unraveling at the seams at this point. And with those new revelations at the back of Elvira's mind, they began traveling through Sweden and eventually Denmark, staying at different inns, avoiding any questions, and fleeing before they could pay any bills. Elvira probably still clung to the hope that they would somehow build a life together. A hope that very sadly would absolutely never come true. Eventually, after they had fled over to Denmark, I guess all the inns in Sweden were already robbed, they fled into a forest. Why? Why, of course they fled from an inn, because they couldn't pay for their stay. And there among the trees, in a meadow, their tragic fairy tale soon would come to a very brutal ending. At first, as they were walking around there in hiding, They survived for a few days on berries and pure desperation, but that was until Sixten raised his revolver. Although we will never know the exact details, what we think happened is that Sixten first shot Elvira in the temple, then gently, tenderly almost, laid her body down, smoothed out her hair, and arranged her as if she was just resting. Then he lay down neatly beside her and put the revolver in his mouth. It would go 3 whole days until someone finally found them there. In a sad little twist, in Elvira's pocket, folded carefully, was a poem written by herself, and it read, "A drop fell into the river, faded out slowly, and the place where it fell, surrounded from wave to wave. What was it that fell, and where did it come from? It was but a life, and but a death that came to win itself a track. Now the water rests once again." Hedvig Jensen, known to the world as Elvira Madigan. Was she, or even he, truly in love? Or simply caught in a whirlwind fantasy? For her, maybe escaping a life of extremely strict control. Like she was rushing into freedom, into the arms of some romantic hero from a novel. But instead, she met a man spiraling into delusion and eventual destruction. But the sad truth is this simple. Elvira brought everything she owned when they were escaping. Sixten brought only a little night bag with necessities and a revolver. He never meant for them to survive. So, final thoughts. What do you think? Please let me know down in the comments. Who was Sixten Sparre? A tragic romantic or just a dangerous narcissist playing dress up at some kind of doomed poet? Well, I think he was at least very mentally unstable with a savior complex and a flair for the dramatic, who just dragged a woman, a young woman, into his fatal fantasy. And I think Elvira, well, she was a young, sheltered woman who fell for a very manipulative man. Could she have escaped? Or was the circus also a prison and she just left for another prison? Like I said, please let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear your rationale of all this.